making a date with yourself on your calendar to have a daily huddle, to look at your calendar, to take inspired action and ensure that you are following through on your plan. And then as you grow and you start bringing people into the fold, whether they're contractors or full-time contractors or employees, then you start having that huddle and that, coming together with them.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is the owner of Stretch into Success Consulting, Laura Noel. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. And yes, it is going to be a fun show and awesome. I'm excited.
Yes. I love the energy. And so, Laura, we would love to know a little bit more about you, and I'm excited about this conversation. But before we get into it, tell us about your career journey leading up to this point.
Absolutely. I served in the military for almost just shy of 28 years, and I loved what I did. I rose to the top echelons in my work. Before I retired, I was running a leadership school. So I was a commandant of a leadership school. And prior to that, I was a musician and a band manager of one of the regional Air Force bands. And as I was approaching 20 years, or even prior to that, I knew that at some point I was going to have to either leave the service or retire. And so throughout my entire military career, I was collecting degrees and certifications, wondering, what am I going to be when I grow up? What am I going to do? How am I going to serve? I was really searching for my purpose. And it was around the time where, right before I hit the 27-year mark, I started to get worried. I really realized that, oh my gosh, I have to retire in 3 years. How do I want to serve? And it's around that time that I started getting really involved in personal development and started really diving into those questions, who am I? What do I want? How do I want to serve? How do I want to live? What's the bigger picture? What's my purpose? And one of the certifications I received was a yoga teacher certification. And I started getting into yoga philosophy and the mindset piece of it. And I started teaching yoga on the military base. Anybody who wanted to could come at the end of the day to the schoolhouse, and I would just teach a free yoga class. And I started noticing how people's mindsets were shifting, how they just had a better sense of well-being, more clarity. They just felt better in their bodies. And I thought, if I could just bottle this up and put it into a curriculum, because I was already in that educational atmosphere, I would love this. This is the path. This is it. Well, I put that intention out, and I went to a seminar where Bob Proctor was talking. And if you're not familiar with Bob Proctor, he's very well known in human potential and success. And he was teaching on the mind and the subconscious and conscious mind and energy and goals. And I knew that whatever he had was what I needed. And I stood up in front of 400 or 500 people at that moment and just asked, how do you know when you found your purpose? I'm exhausted. I'm collecting all of these degrees and certifications. And I have to retire in 3 years, and I don't know what direction to go. And he asked me a few questions about what I did, my background, and he said, we have something I think you would be really great at, and I want you to give me your contact information, and we'll connect after this. Well, long story short, not 3 years later, but 3 months later, I submitted my retirement and it was approved. And then within 6 months, I replaced my income serving people, helping them with their mindset, and I started my business.
Wow. What a story. You must have been, I mean, when you think about changes, I mean, you went in 3 years, thinking 3 years out, and all of a sudden it was changed in 3 months. Why do you think it happened so quickly?
I think it was one, because I gave myself permission to dream and to allow my mind and imagination to go there. And then I made a decision. This is what I want. I need this. And so when the inspiration and the opportunity presented itself, I was very clear that that was in alignment with what I wanted. And I took decisive action. That was a big piece of it. Another really important aspect is I learned to write the script of me, and I became her in a really short amount of time. Up until that point, I was a type A overachiever. I was very busy, had my hands in everything, and I never really had a lot of time to myself to think. I didn't really carve it out. I was always pulled in a multitude of different directions. And just giving myself that space to hear myself think, that's really what started this snowball effect, in essence, that enabled me to dream, enabled me to know and understand when the right opportunities presented themselves that I could leverage them, and I knew which opportunities to leverage. I just had so much more clarity.
It's, you were in the military for 28 years. That's a significant amount of time. And I would imagine the military, there's a certain mindset that you would have inside the military. And to me, it just occurs that there would be like a really significant contrast between the life you're living now and the life you lived for 28 years up until that point where you made that shift and transformation in your life. Is that accurate?
It really is. What I teach and what I learned was our everyday life is really governed by a set of beliefs or paradigms that are in our subconscious mind. Those paradigms are beliefs and ideas that have been passed down from generation to generation. They become a part of us. And those paradigms really run the show. Most of our behavior is habitual. About 96 to 98% of our behavior is habitual. And so when we're caught up in our paradigms and being in the service for that long and understanding our core values and that being a part of every fiber of my being, that was a paradigm. And not all paradigms are bad. It's just a way of living, a way of believing, a way of viewing the world, our perception. So that was my life for almost 28 years. So it was a huge transition. Instead of looking at, well, what could I do when I retire, which is most of the time what people do when they're in any profession for a long period of time, they're in corporate America for 30 years or something. That idea, that way of life just becomes embedded. It becomes a part of their DNA, their personality. So anytime that you're associated with something bigger than yourself for that long a period of time, that becomes a part of your DNA. And typically people will say, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something different. What does my life look like after this? And then they'll look to, well, what have I done? And then they choose something that's similar to what they've done because that's what they know. That's their programming. So for me to become an entrepreneur, not having come from an entrepreneurial family, having been and served in the service in the Air Force for so long, that it was a very, very vastly different way of life.
I can imagine. And it would have been an interesting journey. Now, you inside of this new paradigm that you created, this new business you created, you're coaching people. I'm really curious to know what you, because you would have learned all sorts of new things to work with people on, and you did that through your journey of exploration, but as well your experience of being in the military. Do you find that you bring, because many people that you would coach, I would think, would probably not be in the Air Force or military, and so you've got this really vast experience that many people would not even have a window into. Do you find you bring some of that to the coaching that you do?
Yes, I do, because a big part of what I help people through is I help them first and foremost discover what it is they truly want and desire, and develop the leadership skills to make it happen. So often we think about leadership as leading other people, but we also have to learn how to be intelligent followers. We have to learn how to lead ourselves and develop that discipline. So a big part of what I've done and seen and worked through in the military is definitely a part of what I teach now, in terms of individuals and even teams.
And what would be, in your opinion, working with people that, and I'm not sure what the military term is for, I can't remember, I'm sure I've seen it in a movie where it's like non-military. What do you call non-military?
Oh, civilians?
Civilians. There you go. I was like trying to think of that, military. Let's talk to the civilians. So from civilians, what do you find like the DNA of a civilian versus a DNA of like a military person who's gone through all of that? What is, and not to say that, both people could go in, when I say DNA, both people could probably go into either role, but what do you find that is, there's going to be pros and cons. What are some of the pros that you think are missing in the DNA of an entrepreneur that the military background would bring to an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question, because I think I think there's a lot of similarities, because in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a level of discipline. I would say one of the things that I learned in the military that I feel we don't get really deeply into until you're in your entrepreneurial journey and you're really scaling and growing, but is the sense of team and building a team and leaning on each other and building a certain level of trust. I mean, I feel really blessed. My experience in serving is I've had the opportunity to be a part of some amazing teams, and it felt like family, really. The level of communication that we had with one another. If somebody in the morning, especially I was a musician for a number of years and running a music organization. And then, of course, in the leadership school, we would have morning huddles and we would kind of chant and get the day off started on the right foot. But if somebody didn't look right or they just didn't seem like they were having a great day, we didn't ignore it. We addressed it. And so I feel like having that benefit, having been a part of something much bigger than just a work organization, being a part of something much bigger than yourself, truly being of service and creating that family, I think that's a big piece of what is missing today in a lot of organizations, something that we could do a lot better.
That's very interesting. And I would say probably even more so now that many people are working. I mean, people were working remotely prior to COVID-19, but then in 2020, COVID-19 really brought that to a whole nother level. In some ways, really great levels, right? People working remotely. I mean, this is our industry. The bookkeeping industry has been going in that direction for a long time, and many people, client side and bookkeeper side, were resisting that, right? It's like, no, I want them at my desk near me, right? But now it's there. It's there for sure, and will be for in a new way for a long time. And so I imagine this issue, and you talk about meeting with your team and doing a chant and calling people up and saying, hey, is everything okay? I mean, wow. I mean, that's unique. You don't see that very often in any business. I mean, maybe Walmart, you hear the stories of Walmart. They do the chants in the morning.
Right.
And many people would go, oh, that's kind of like face painter type stuff, right? As like, what use is that? But in terms of bringing people together and like music, right? Chanting is
Right.
music, and bringing people together like that is very powerful.
It really is. And, you brought up a really great point in that, in your bookkeeping community, people were saying, oh my gosh, I want to see people face to face. But the cool thing is, working in that realm, being accustomed to having hands-on, working face to face with people, this is a paradigm shift in and of itself. So it's an opportunity to really, for people to create the environment in terms of what they want. How do they want to feel? What kind of relationships do they want to create with clients or with their team? They get to create that now. Whatever they can imagine, they can create.
Absolutely. And, just sitting here thinking about this kind of sparked an interest on this whole concept of starting the day and, a unique way in your service in the military. If you think about how rare that is, and myself, it's like, how does one create that kind of a culture and an energy? And it's really the only person who can is a leader. It's not like you go, like someone says, listen, we're going to do a chant every morning. I mean, if there wasn't some leader ensuring that happened, that created an environment to make that happen, ensure that it happened, all that good stuff, it wouldn't happen. And it just really reflects back to, often in small businesses, I think we forget that we're the leader.
Right.
And anything that we have in the business is a result of our leadership. And so if we have things we like, it's because we have leadership leading that. And if we have things we dislike, it's because we have leadership leading the dislike.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, even if you're not in a position of power, you can lead from wherever you are. So you can have informal leaders. Just going back to that example of having our morning chant in the schoolhouse. I mean, if I didn't bring that up, I could have had somebody on my team say, hey, could we try something? I saw this really, really cool thing when I was visiting another schoolhouse. And that's how, we learn from other organizations too. If we have an opportunity to participate in another organization or witness another type of leadership, anyone on the team could bring that to the forefront into the conversation. And so you can lead from wherever you are just by your influence and your enthusiasm and who you bring on board with you. And yes, when you're serving in a leadership role, if you're the CEO of your company and your organization, you do have to create the environment that allows that creativity to bubble over and gives people permission to kind of implement it and empowers them. And that definitely comes from within, but also from the top down.
Absolutely. And now let's examine a little bit here, because many of our listeners and the listener listening to us now may go, wait a second, I am a solo bookkeeping business owner working in my business. What do I need leadership for? Got nobody to lead.
Right. Well, the first person you can lead is yourself. And, we all have blind spots. We all do. And so we all have paradigms. We all have limiting beliefs. So even if you're new in your entrepreneurial journey or new in your bookkeeping business and you don't have that team around you, when you're building it and growing, you're going to come up against some deep-rooted beliefs that will kind of stop you in your tracks. And if you're not experiencing that or the fear, then you're not moving forward, you're moving laterally, you're in your comfort zone. So anytime that you're experiencing growth or you're embarking on a new opportunity or maybe communicating with somebody that you normally wouldn't communicate with, maybe it's somebody you'd like to work with as a client and they're, it's intimidating. Well, you're growing when you're stepping into your leadership. So you're leading yourself, but you're also leading clients. You're leading clients down a path of agreement. You're leading clients in their bookkeeping practices. You're leading potential clients to work with you.
So true. So true. And I think, it brings up a great question, which, and maybe it's even if you're a leader and a seasoned leader, how good a leader are you? Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? I mean, that requires examination and likely requires someone from the outside with different set of eyes and ears helping do that examination. And it's the same for a person who's exactly the same for a person who is not a lead, physically having people to lead, but you're leading your customers, you're leading yourself, and looking at where can you improve your leadership? What kind of level leadership are you running? And that requires someone from the outside, like yourself, to help identify and look at where are the gaps and how can you make transformations or changes in your life to have yourself step up more as a leader and face whatever it is that prevents you from doing so. But it leads that right back to the beginning of this conversation is really knowing what you want and where you want to go, and then being the leader that you need to be to actually get there. I mean, just an example of that you gave of that morning huddle. I mean, that's a leadership activity. It's like, we're going to meet every morning and we're going to connect with each other. And if that's not existing in someone's business today, well, how do you actually get that to happen? And how do you ensure that it happens all the time? There's a lot that goes into all of this.
There really is. And even if you are a solopreneur, you could still have on your calendar the morning huddle. And it's interesting. I was recently reading On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis, and he was talking about the basic ingredients of leadership. And one is having that guiding vision, and two is passion. So Napoleon Hill talks about this. You have to have a vision, a goal, and a burning desire. So you have to have that in place, something that's much greater than what you're doing, and you're leading yourself toward that vision. But part of what you mentioned was really knowing thyself. You have to know yourself, and we all have those blind spots. So getting the coaching and support to help you overcome those hurdles. Integrity, of course, is a big part of it, and curiosity and being daring, or having the courage to listen to that intuition, follow the curiosity, take the action steps, even if you don't know all of the steps it's going to take to get from point A to Z, and be courageous enough to know you're going to be okay. You have to be able and willing to step through that fear. But you can do that whether you have a team or it's just you right now. So making a date with yourself on your calendar to have a daily huddle, to look at your calendar, to take inspired action and ensure that you are following through on your plan. And then as you grow and you start bringing people into the fold, whether they're contractors or full-time contractors or employees, then you start having that huddle and that, coming together with them.
If I were going to name this episode, I'd likely name it the day I realized I needed to be a leader.
Wow.
And the reason I say that is because if you think of our listeners' journey into business, typically, I mean, not for everyone, but if I'm going to generalize, and I will, is that most come from a technical background. It's a technician, a bookkeeper. They've learned a technical skill to do the books. And then eventually they find themselves in a business. And Michael Gerber in E-Myth called that an entrepreneurial seizure. It's like, I'm going to start a business, and I have more freedom, and I'm going to make more money, and life's going to be great. And then they start the business, and it's exactly nothing like that, because business is very different than being a technician and doing that specific role. And I would say that at some point, and maybe even in this conversation, our listener, like myself, even just kind of connecting with that, is that what's required is leadership. And so if we think of E-Myth, and many of our listeners would have read E-Myth Bookkeeper, Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth, and the concepts are all similar, is that there's the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur is where leadership lives for sure. And it's like you would think that part, in order to take the business really beyond a technician with staff, you really have to become a leader.
You really do. And I think having that guiding vision for yourself, a goal that is exciting and scary at the same time, a goal that is multiple levels beyond where you are now, where you can see it, you just don't know how you're going to get there. You have to have that guiding vision. Otherwise, you brought up a great point. You'll get stuck in working in the business instead of working on the business. And after all, why do we become entrepreneurs? So getting clear as to why you're doing it. And if you want to be of service, if you want to leave a legacy, do you want to be there for your family more? Do you want to have more fun? Do you want to give to causes that touch your heart? Do you just want to have more free time for yourself? You can get there, but you have to decide, and you have to build that in as a part of your vision. And the how is not important at that point. The fun is in finding out how you're going to get there. But some ideas is, building a team around you. Maybe not right now, but putting the systems and the mechanisms in place as you're growing to alleviate and give you some of that time back. So there's a lot of ways I think people forget to put that as a part of their vision because they feel like they have to either choose entrepreneurial success or living the life they want. But the irony is they often want to become entrepreneurs because they want to live the life they want. And you can have both, but you have to be very deliberate in it. And you have to be willing to question your beliefs, in terms of what does it take to be a successful leader or an entrepreneur? What does it take to earn an income?
I agree. And I think that's a big piece of this journey is, I would say that, of the bookkeeping business owners that I've met, the desire is there. And definitely the desire to have a business that they love and a business that's there and gives them all the things that they want is there, but it's likely lacking in the belief side of what that really can be, and also the decision, the commitment, right? If we think about being a leader, it is a choice to make and say, people may be thinking, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to have to lead. And that could be, we think about kids in school, right? It's like, put up your hand if you know the answer to this question. Few put up their hand. Well, the people who put up their hand that's leadership. And it's like people have this context around what leadership is and what it means to be a leader. And it can be all embroiled in their own self-worth and confidence and all of that. And so it can be very daunting. But yet the people that are on that journey have no idea what it means to be a leader.
Right. And they have to redefine that. They are leaders. If you are running a business and you're communicating with potential clients, you're leading them. You are a leader. And so if you don't shift how you see yourself, you mentioned belief. So you could have all of these wonderful dreams, and unless the belief is there, you're not going to reach them. You have to rewrite the script of you and shift that with regard to your leadership and your level of success, as if you already have it, and instill that belief inside of you. And when you do, that's when you'll start to notice the synchronicities, the opportunities in front of you, and you'll start capitalizing on them. And you mentioned decision. You have to decide first what you want before you'll achieve it. And, one of my mentors, Bob Proctor, he's talked about, if you want to go on a trip to Paris, but you don't have the money to go on that trip to Paris, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you want to go there. And it doesn't matter that you don't have the funds in the bank account right now to go there until you decide. When you decide you're going to go on that trip, you'll you'll figure it out. You'll the funds will come to you. You'll find solutions, but until you make that committed decision, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So you've got to redefine what you think leadership is and own it, and then take decisive action like the person you want to become and create that vision for yourself.
Yeah, and magical things will happen. I mean, it's unrecognizable likely to our listener when they make those choices and take those new levels, and it never ends. There's always a new layer of the onion to unpeel in our journey as entrepreneurs and business people. And what I'm excited about in this conversation is that any improvement in the definition for our listener in their own leadership, and improvement in their own embracing of their own leadership in their business and their life, is going to land better for the clients that they serve. And that's really what their clients, small business owners, need, is leadership. And so that's exciting, because that means great things for the business owners. It means great things for our listener in their business. When there's increased leadership for their clients, that means there's increased value, and increased value means there's likely more income. And so lots of great benefits in this conversation for all people involved.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. When you see yourself as a leader, just think about energy. If you were talking with friends and somebody walked into the room and they were in a bad mood, you could feel that. You can feel that energy. You're like, oh, I don't want to be around that person right now. But the same is true when somebody is really open and gregarious or confident. You feel drawn to them. And so the same is true when you rebuild your self-image to be in alignment with the entrepreneur you want to be, the leader you already are. A different type of clientele is going to be attracted to you. You'll start to notice a shift. So maybe you, at this point, don't want to have a huge team around you. You want to have more of a boutique style of operation where you have, really high-end clients, but a smaller number that you want to serve. But it starts with you leading yourself and you doing this inner work. And really, this is not easy. Wallace D. Wattles talks in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, how there's no labor from which most people shrink than they do of sustained effort in alignment with that thought that you would rather believe in. So this could be that image of you being a leader, running your business the way you envision it to be running, leading the lifestyle you want to live. It's not easy. It's easy intellectually to understand it when I'm saying it here on this podcast, but to implement it day in and day out and really be the leader of your thoughts, it's not an easy job. So it's very important to align yourself with people, mentors, coaches who are doing what you want to be doing and get the right guidance.
I agree. And Laura, if I wanted to up-level my leadership, I really couldn't think of a better person other than someone who has spent 28 years building their own personal leadership, serving their country. And so, Laura, if people wanted to work on their leadership with you, how would they do that?
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really been a pleasure connecting with you and your audience. And I would love to connect with you. We have a landing page specifically for your audience, and it's stretchintosuccess.com/bookkeeper. And on that page, you'll find a nice welcome. There's a little download for some mindset techniques that'll help you stay in alignment so you're not stuck in busy mode. You're doing the right things. I do have workshops and webinars, usually every other month. So if there isn't a registration page, when you go to that page, there is a wait list. So definitely you don't want to miss that. Sign up. We'll dive into a lot of these concepts. And then if you know that you're ready to work with a coach, you can book a call with me and we'll sit down and talk about where you are and where you want to go, what might be standing in your way, and how we might be able to partner moving forward.
I love it. I love it. So many great options. And Laura, this has been fantastic. I'm excited for our listener and their leadership moving forward. And I want to thank you for your generosity in coming on the show and sharing your story and your expertise in leadership with us.
Thank you very much.
It's been our pleasure, Laura. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.